Social expectation drowns us all inside. What you have should be what I want, 'cause what I have just ain't alright. The clothes I wear, the way I comb my hair, how I live, oh, I don't care.
So, the last lesson was about 5 barriers that bar us from getting the Nisbah and connection with Allah. And the first hijab, parda, veil and barrier from Nisbah and connection with Allah was masiyat, sinning we spoke about. The second barrier is causing trouble, disturbing people, discomfort to people is another barrier. The third one was arrogance and pride. We spoke about arrogance and pride, takabbur. The fourth barrier is the company that you keep. Company of conflicting personalities in this path. When you keep the company of conflicting personalities, it bars you from this path. And the fifth barrier is disrespect of the sheikh. And disrespect of the sheikh could be sectionized into 2 sections. It can be actions based. By your actions, it could be belief based, the aqidah and how you think about your sheikh. We now come to the topic of incidents which occurred in the history of Islam, in the lives of our awliyaullah, of transferring the nisbah, that connection. We speak about Hazrat Shah Baik, rahmatullah alayh. Hazrat Shah Ghulam Baik, rahmatullah alayh, was very famous for the love of his mentor, Sheikh Abdul Mualli, rahmatullah alayh. Once upon invitation from friends, the Sheikh, rahmatullah alayh, visited his village, Saharanpur, and Shah Baik, rahmatullah alayh, was with him. He knew that his mentor had left for another place, and he knew that there was no sustenance at home, that is the home of the Sheikh. Wherever the Sheikh would be invited, Shah Baik, rahmatullah alayh, would have the household provide food for 2 extra people. At night, after praying Isha and putting his mentor comfortably to sleep, he would travel back to Ambata for 12 miles and deliver the food at home, then travel back to Saharanpur and reach his sheikh at the time of Fajr prayer. When Hazrat Abdul Mualli, rahmatullah alayh, reached home, he asked his wife about how things went. She was surprised and said, "This time you send food every day?" Upon further inquisition, she narrated how Shah Baik, rahmatullah alayh, would come and deliver the food. Hazrat called for Shah Baik, rahmatullah alayh, and he explained, "How can it be that the Sheikh's wife and daughter are hungry while Baik goes to sleep with a contented stomach?" Upon hearing this, Hazrat Abdul Mualli, rahmatullah alayh, became extremely glad and said, "Though you lessened my tawakkul, you lessened my reliance upon Allah, though you did that, but you exemplary completed the demands of khidmat and servicehood." Then he held Hazrat Shah Baik close to his chest and he infused the nisbah into his heart through the khidmat, infusion of the nisbah. Another incident, how the Nisbah is transferred. Sometimes just like that. But of course, it is when the time is ready. From Fattu to Sa'in Fattah Ali, Rahmatullah alayhi. The Sheikh, who is Maulana Zulfikar from the Naqshbandi, Damat Barakatuhum wa Afiyatuhum, he talks about how his Sheikh, Hazrat Murshid Alam, Rahmatullah alayhi, would narrate a story of Khwaja Sirajuddin's Khanqa sanctuary, Rahmatullah alayhi. There came an illiterate man there by the name of Fattu. He could not even recite Quran. But when he gave the bay'at to Hazrat Khwaja Sirajuddin, Rahmatullah alayhi, he literally sold himself. Thus he started to dwell at the sanctuary, the Khanqa, and would spend day and night in the devoted service and khidmat of his mentor. Hazrat Khwaja Siraj, Rahmatullah alayhi, had many acres of land nearby. One day Fattu said to him, Hazrat, if the mountain ahead were trimmed from a specific area, the water would change its course, and thus your land would be utilized if it is trimmed from a specific area. Hazrat replied, this is something very hard, to which he said, please simply allow me. And Hazrat relented owing to the burning desire of Fattu. Thus Fattu took his tools and headed for the mountain. He would spend his time tirelessly trying to carve a route for the water out of the mountain. People would pass by, and when they would learn what he was engaged in, they would laugh and say things such as, who said that foolish people have passed away? There is one right here. He would not care about anyone or anything and stay focused on his goal. Dear friend, carving mountains is not easy. Changing the course of water is indeed arduous. But when love integrates itself into action, Allah Ta'ala opens ways. For Fattu, the experience was as if every blow to the boulders was a cup of the friend's love. Finally, there came a day when the mountain gave way to the water, and Hazrat's land became capable of being cultivated. A few days after this incident, Hazrat Rahmatullah alayhi wanted houses to be built by the Khanqa, for space was little and the influx of guests was more. Thus masons were put to work. These masons would rest at noon, but Fattu would stay awake, thinking that if he were to rest, instead of preparing the cement, it would waste time in the work of his sheikh. Thus he would spend the burning noon preparing cement while no one would know. As the poet says, those who are true in their love do not speak, they are silent. Their lips are sealed, while the heart cries for love. One day Hazrat Khwaja Sahib Rahmatullah alayhi woke up and peered out of his balcony. He saw that everyone was sleeping whilst the lone aficionado was preparing cement, while soaked in sweat from the burning sun. Hazrat realized the intensity of love in him and immediately sent for him. When he heard that he was being called, he became afraid, thinking that he might have done something wrong. He said, let me wash my body and clothes and then meet Hazrat. But when Hazrat found out, he said, no, tell Fattu to come to me just as he is. Thus Fattu came as he was, and Hazrat Khwaja Sirajuddin Rahmatullah alayhi held him close to his chest, infusing the noor of the Nisbat into his heart. Fattu started crying profusely, thinking about the huge responsibility that had just been placed on his humble shoulders. Khwaja Sahib Rahmatullah alayhi comforted him and said, this is a blessing from Allah, ni'mat, that we cannot hold back. We can't keep it back. We can't hold it back. Once we saw that the container was clean and ready, we transferred the Nisbah. Now Allah Ta'ala will take care of everything else, the Sheikh told him. Afterwards, the glorious Nisbah started making its own ways. Fatu started to learn how to read Quran, and revered scholars started to give the bay'ah to him. Eventually he became known as Sa'in Fattah Ali, Master Fattah Ali. Hazrat Murshid Alam, the author, Sheikh Rahmatullah Alayhi, narrated that he went for the Hajj. He himself went for Hajj, Hazrat Murshid Alam, and happened to go to Madrasa Sawlatiyah, which is in Makkah, where a lot of scholars had gathered. He said that he saw all the scholars, the ulama, sleeping on the floor on mats, while a bed had been placed in the center for Sa'in Fattah Ali, Rahmatullah Alayhi. This blessing is indeed something, that it turned the illiterate Fattu into Fattah Ali. Another incident, but see how it comes about. Hazrat Abdul Malik Siddiqui and the Nisbah, Rahmatullah Alayhi. Hazrat Abdul Malik, Rahmatullah Alayhi, while narrating the incident of his Sheikh Pir Fazal Ali, Rahmatullah Alayhi, infusing the Nisbah into his heart, said that he went to see him in the district of Bhawalpur. Hazrat took his followers to the outskirts of the town. No one knows what suddenly transpired in Hazrat's heart. He started running towards the jungle, calling out my name loudly. Since I was still in the town, the other disciples of Hazrat Rahmatullah Alayhi came to search for me. My companion, Maulana Abdul Ghaffar, told me about my mental state, and thus I hurriedly came. When I reached him, I told him I was here, and he smiled and asked, "You have arrived?" To which I said, "Yes, Hazrat." He then made wudu, prayed 2 rakats, and engaged in dua. After which he pushed his sandals towards me and asked me to wear them. I became afraid of disrespecting him by wearing his noble sandals, but he insisted 3 times. In my heart, I made dua to Allah to put the notion in Hazrat's heart that I had mentally agreed to his proposition, but physically I just could not do it. My dua was accepted, and after the 3rd time, Hazrat Rahmatullah Alayhi did not ask me again. He put his hands on my shoulders and said, "My feet and your feet are equal," and then he wore the sandals. Hazrat Abdul Malik, Rahmatullah Alayhi, further narrates, I intended to go to Ahmadapur, but felt that Hazrat Rahmatullah Alayhi wanted to take me to Fakirpur. He said, "I have to carry a lot of weight on the way. Who will accompany me?" I became perplexed at what the heavy burden was. But from the entire group, Haji Karim Baksh, Maulana Abdul Ghaffar, and I proposed our names to go along. On the way, I was walking along the right side of my Sheikh's horse when he asked me, "What spiritual lesson have you engaged in at this point?" I replied, "Muraqaba Ma'iyya." Muraqaba Ma'iyya. That is meditation on Allah's presence, which is basically Allahu Hadiri, Allah is present by me. Allahu Nadiri, Allah is watching me. Allahu Ma'i, Allah is with me. I'm in this muraqabah and this meditation of Allah's presence. He explained some guidelines about it and said, the end of a wali is at the muraqabah ma'iyyat. This is where he ends, at muraqabah ma'iyyat. Allahu Hadiri, Allah is present by me. Allahu Nadiri, Allah is watching me. Allahu Ma'i, Allah is with me. All further lessons from this point are from the Prophets alayhimus salatu wassalam. And he then infused the Nisbah into my heart. Now an intense feeling overcame me, as if a huge burden had been placed on my entire existence. I started falling, but my hand became stuck. in the horse's reins, and so I was carried along for quite a long time till I regained complete control and started walking again. Afterwards, Hazrat inquired from the two men on his left, Maulana Abdul Ghaffar and Haji Karim Baksh, about their spiritual lessons, which were behind mine. Hazrat infused the Nisbah into them, but they did not undergo the same state as I did. Passing Alipur, we reached Fakirpur. Hazrat brought 2 turban cloths from his treasury and said to Haji Karim Baksh, "This cloth in my hand is one that I have used before, while this one is new. Which one do you prefer?" Haji Sahib, Rahmatullah alayhi, took the used one, and thus the new one was given to Maulana Abdul Ghaffar, alayhim ar-rahmah. Then Hazrat said, "I have already given the sandals to him." I have already given the sandals to him, referring to me. At that point, the secret behind running in the jungle and giving the sandals opened up to me. For this state had never been witnessed before. Maulvi Noor Baksh, Rahmatullah alayhi, started crying, and when I inquired about the reason, he said, "So what? So what if we have been given khilafat and we have become deputies? The real blessings followed you. Since Hazrat, Rahmatullah alayhi, granted you the sandals and had you walk along with him." So friends, Maulana is saying, friends, the Nisbah is indeed an extremely glorious blessing. So strive for it. Strive for it and purify the heart for it. A man wanted to learn, and this is a great lesson for us. A man wanted to learn Ismi Azam, the great name of Allah. And when a person knows this name, when he makes dua with this name, his dua is accepted. Big secret, power behind this. It's called Al-Ismul Azam. So a man wanted to learn the Ismul Azam, or the great name of Allah, so he requested his sheikh for it. It is this same Ismul Azam that in the time of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wassalam, that one of his ministers, a wali in his court, he used that name to get the throne of Bilqis. Stories in the Holy Quran and in the commentary it is mentioned. He used that Ismul Azam. His name was Asif, with Hamza, a sword and a fa. Asif, Rahmatullah. Anyhow, the sheikh gave him, so he requested the sheikh to please give me the secret of Ismi Azam. The sheikh gave him a container that was closed on top and instructed him to deliver it somewhere without looking inside. Thus he set off. At one point he thought about looking at the contents, so he opened it and found a rat inside. You know, a rat moves very quickly. The moment he pulled the lid, the rat popped out and ran away. Upon coming back, his mentor asked him about how things went. He replied, "Hazrat, I only tried to peek inside the container." To which his sheikh said, "When you cannot even guard such a minute thing, then how about the Ismi Azam? You think you could guard that?" Hence the Mashayikh, they infuse the Nisbah into hearts that have the capacity to guard it and to enhance the radiance. So the container needs to be purified. Everyone wants Nisbah, connection with Allah, closeness to Allah. But they need to purify themselves first. If someone hands a cup laden with impurities to you and asks you to pour clean milk in it, your instinct would obviously not allow you to do it. You would hold it to be against manners. Just as the cup laden with impurity cannot hold fresh milk, the impure heart cannot hold the Nisbah. First the heart needs to show yearning. And then Allah Ta'ala instills the Nisbah into it. Note that just as a house with picture does not let angels of Rahmah in, so to a heart with pictures of all other than Allah does not let His mercy in. A heart with pictures of all other than Allah does not let Allah's rahmat in. Hence, our job is to purify the heart, while Allah's part is to fill it with radiance. So the sheikh and the mentor is like a postman. If you purify the heart, the sheikh cannot stop from infusing the Nisbah. You just can't stop. If a sheikh holds back the Nisbah while the seeker has completed all the prerequisites, then there's a possibility that the sheikh's own Nisbah will be taken back. There have been numerous incidents when the mashayikh, after finding the signs, did not infuse the Nisbah, and then they received a warning in their dream. Warning in their dream. Inna Allah ya'murukum an tu'addul amanati ila ahliha. Verily Allah commands you to turn over the belongings to their custodians. Got this warning in their dreams. Hence, the Nisbah is really a belonging, an amanat, a trust. And the sheikh is as if a postman. The moment you have inculcated humility, talab, yearning, and sincerity into your heart, Allah Ta'ala will instruct the sheikh to infuse the Nisbah within you. And then the entire world will witness its blessings. A worrisome fact. Today, there are many people who desire the Nisbah, but there are only few who are willing to purify their hearts for it. Travel the world, and you shall not find the likes of such a person. Everyone seems to be indulged in the desires of their inner self, the desires of the nafs, the carnal desires, while the desire of Allah has died out. Break free of idols. Break free of idols, whether of stone, whether of mine. There must be no image, no picture, except only Allah. Illallah, la ilaha illallah. Break free of idols, whether of stone, whether of mind. As long as a person does not break free of idols that exist in his psyche, in his mind, in various forms, the glorious nur of the Nisbah will never enter the heart. Every heart today depicts love of the dunya and the world engraved into it. The poet says, I never found the one to share my thoughts with. Men of desires were found, men of God were not. I never found the one to share my thoughts with. Men of desires were found, men of Allah were not. May Allah grant us the ability to remain connected with our noble mashayikh and grant us the beautiful nur of nisbat in our hearts. Ameen. Then a stage comes in tasawwuf where authorization comes in. What is authorization in tasawwuf? And you hear that somebody has become a khalifa, so and so person has received khilafat. It has remained a modus operandi of the mashayikh since the beginning to authorize their disciples in advancing the science of tasawwuf to others after they have completed their spiritual course. This is commonly known as khilafat. And the parable of it, the similitude of it, is that of a student graduating from a madrasa and earning his sanad, his degree. So the sanad, the certificate, does not imply that the student does not need to learn any further, because now he's come an alim. But that degree just implies that the student has now reached a level of knowledge where he can teach it to others, and by teaching to others, he can increase his own knowledge through further research and mutala'ah. Khilafah implies that the disciple is now capable of helping others attain spiritual blessings, and that his own progress will now be attained through this. It's like da'wah. When you go out in 40 days in tabligh, by helping others, by helping others, by helping others, by giving da'wah, one progresses. The objective of khilafat, the purpose behind authorizing disciples, a sheikh has certain disciples, then the time comes where he gives them khilafat. The purpose of that in the science of tasawwuf is to advance the work of calling people to deen and connecting them to their Lord. So this is really a responsibility placed upon the deputy's shoulders to advance the order unto others and become a source of self-rectification for others. Those who adhere firmly to the cause and spend all their efforts in advancing it to others find it as a source of their own spiritual progress, while those who act in ignorance are eventually deprived of its blessings. Just as a student, a talibul ilm, who has finished his religious studies in madrasa, finds his own knowledge increasing with the passage of time and experience, mashallah, but he ends up losing it upon choosing another profession. This is why Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi, rahmatul alayh, in his annual guidelines for his caliphs and deputies, would state that so-and-so has left this responsibility, engage in another activity. Therefore, I remove him from my list. But there's a difference between nisbat and khilafat. One should know that there exists a difference between a bearer of the nisbah and a khalifa. Nisbah refers to a hal, to a state of being connected to Allah, while khilafah is a responsibility, a job, a zimmedari bestowed by the sheikh upon a disciple. Usually people do not understand this difference. The following points make it clear between nisbah and khilafah. 1. Nisbah refers to a hal, to an inner state, whereas khilafat refers to a responsibility, a task, a job, zimmedari. 2. Everyone can attain the nisbah through hard work and dedication, whereas khilafah is something of a hierarchical nature that has to be passed on, that the sheikh assigns this upon a sign from Allah, but the sign comes from Allah. Third difference, the nisbah is a blessing, ni'mat from Allah. The khilafah is more of a burden. It's more of a burden. 4. One should strive for the nisbah. Strive for the nisbah. But one should be, but khilafat, one should be afraid of this burden. Shouldn't desire khilafat. Should be afraid of this zimmedari. Number 5, one should have a yearning for the nisbah, long for that nisbah, to really fall in love with Allah, where there are no idols, nothing besides Allah in the heart, and the only matlub and goal and aim and object is Allah. A yearning for that. But with the khilafah, it's different. Desiring khilafah. Somebody takes bed with a sheikh, and now in his heart he is desiring to become a khalifa. Desiring khilafah is considered shirk in the part of tasawwuf, that is shirk. 6th difference. Nisbah implies that the bearer has established a connection with Allah Ta'ala. Khilafah implies that the assignee can now advance the science unto others. Number 7, it is possible to be sahibun nisbah without being a khalifa. A sahibul khilafah, a khalifa, needs to be as-sahibun nisbah as well. The modus operandi of Khilafat. Before authorizing someone in this science, the Mashaykh usually keep him in their company and engage him in exercises of self-control while allotting significant spiritual tawajjuh, attention towards him. When they realize through their divine insight that the seeker has reached the required level of islah, rectification and purification, and that he is able to preach further, they anoint him with the Khilafat. Some Mashaykh are not that strict in terms of authorization. For example, Sheikh Hazrat Haji Imdadullah Muhajir Makki, Rahmatullah alayhi, would allot the Khilafah with considerable ease and without intense self-struggle. Conversely, Hazrat Maulana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi, Rahmatullah alayhi, and Hazrat Sheikhul Hind, Maulana Mahmud al Hassan, alayhi rahmah, would not authorize someone as quickly. Thus, after the demise of Hazrat Haji Sahib, Rahmatullah alayhi, some of his Khalifas gave the bayat to Hazrat Gangohi, Rahmatullah alayhi, and said, "We were granted Khilafat at Hazrat Haji Sahib's," to which Maulana Rashid Ahmad would reply, "With me, firstly, there is some self-struggle. Only the Mashaykh are aware of their disciples' spiritual state, and they are wise enough to decide when and how he should be used for religious work. Thus, at times they find signs from Allah to bestow the authorization to someone, and at times they consult other deputies of theirs. No one should indulge in the thinking that why did he do so? Why has so and so one become authorized? Well, how come so and so one has become a Khalifa within this science? However, it is an established fact that whoever attains the company of the Mashaykh with a pure intention and dedication, Allah Ta'ala instructs his Shaykh to use him for religious work and authorize him. When the Mashaykh become aware of this divine instruction from Allah, they cannot hold anything back, since they are only a spokesman, and if they hold back, they could lose their own nisbat. It is not as if they walk around distributing the khilafah to whoever they wish. The moment they recognize someone capable, they infuse the nisbah due to Allah's statement, "Inna Allah ya'murukum an tu'addul amanati ila ahliha." Verily, Allah commands you to hand over the amanat, the belongings, the trust, to their custodians. Once, an alim gave the spiritual pledge to this humble person to himself, the author. The radiance of piety and virtue shone from his face. This alim continued to engage in spiritual exercises, mujahadat, allotted to him. And after 2 years, looking at his spiritual state, the author is saying, I desired to keep him in my company for some time, to have him complete his spiritual course, or the suluk. However, the alim's demanding schedule of teaching did not allow for it. The thought crossed my heart many times that he should be authorized and given khilafat. But because he had not been able to remain in company in suhbat substantially, therefore it was being delayed. One day, I went to sleep in the afternoon, the qailula, according to the sunnah. I saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a dream, and he said to me, if you wish your nisbah to remain intact, then authorize him. The author says, the adversity with which the time was passed till the next Maghrib Salat was something that only I can feel. What difficulty and adversity until the next Maghrib Salat. Right after the Maghrib Salat, I authorized him in the science. 2 types of authorization. Some mashayikh would authorize people in 2 ways. The first being the traditional Khilafah, with the deputy being known as Mijazul Bay'ah. The second being where the bearer can prescribe zikr for others or hold gatherings of zikr, in which case the bearer is known as Mijazul Suhbah. The second one is not the same as the first one, so one must be really careful in differentiating. Hazrat Muhajir Makki Rahmatullah Alayhi would state, there are two categories of my Khalifas. The first, whom I have authorized myself to advance the science, and these are the real Khalifas. The second is where someone has asked me about prescribing zikr to others. Can I prescribe zikr to others? And then I authorize him. This authorization is not of the same level as the first one. In Hazrat Thanwi's order, Rahmatullah Alayh, there were two constant types of deputies, Mijazul Bay'ah and Mijazul Suhbah. The level of both was different. But alims, wow, ulama, noble scholars and authorization. The radiance of Nisbah has a deep-rooted connection with religious knowledge, with ilm of deen. Big connection with that and Nisbah. The hearts of ulama, scholars, their hearts are ideal cultivating grounds for the Nisbah because of the self-struggle that they have endured in the line of acquiring knowledge, acts as a catalyst for the Nisbah. Thus, the person that attains religious knowledge with dedication and pure intention attains the Nisbah quicker than ordinary people. The scholars, the ulama, do attain religious knowledge. However, they will only find the actuality of this knowledge opening to them once they have attained the company of a sheikh and colored themselves with the shades of knowledge. The knowledge of the Sharia is essentially a color. The noble scholars, the ulama, are distributors of this color. They distribute the color, different colors and shades of the Sharia. While the noble mashayikh, they do the job of applying this color to the creation. They actually apply the color to the creation, whereas the scholars distribute this color. The parable of a scholar, an alim, attaining the company of a sheikh is such that a person comes to the sheikh with oil in his lamp. All the sheikh needs to do is simply provide the spark. If religious scholars, ulama, if they were to spend their time in the company of the sheikh with full provision for rules and respect and adab, they would attain the nisbah relatively faster. But sometimes there's a big disease that can exist amongst the scholars, which is the disease of takabbur and pride. The parable of them is as if radiance upon radiance, nurun ala nur, one being the nur of knowledge and the other the nur of nisbah. This is the reason that they are granted khilafah quickly. So they are capable of being role models in the society, but no one should desire khilafat. That is shirk in tasawwuf. Conversely, an ordinary person who wishes to attain the nisbah needs to engage in substantial self-discipline exercise. However, when such a person attains the nisbah, even he too develops extraordinary insight, and the knowledge of the Sharia becomes integrated in his thinking. Their natural instinct becomes in accordance with the Sharia, and when they turn towards acquiring knowledge, they rapidly gain success, even the ordinary person. As a matter of fact, some are spiritually so perfect that they develop a knack for divine knowledge. This proves that the relation between the knowledge of the Sharia and the knowledge of spiritualism is as if two shades of the same color. All this served as the basis for the ulama of Darul Uloom Deoband to attain the company of a sheikh for Islam, for self-rectification, after graduating from the revered institute. As a matter of fact, for the first 50 years of Darul Uloom Deoband, no one would be granted the graduation turban until they completed a course in spirituality at the hands of a sheikh. After 50 years, when it was seen that the students would not have as much time, they would be given the graduation turban in a dastar bandi, in a ceremony, jalsa, after taking an oath that they would give the spiritual pledge to someone in their respective region. Incidents of authorization in Tasawwuf. The authorization of Sayyid Ahmad Shaheed, Rahmatullah alayhi. Hazrat Sayyid Ahmad, Rahmatullah alayhi, first gave the bay'ah to Shah Abdul Aziz, Rahmatullah alayhi. He was made to stay at the nearby masjid where Hazrat Shah Sahib, Rahmatullah alayhi, and his students would pray, and instructed to gain religious knowledge. 6 months later, there was a wedding in the Shah family, where his other two brothers, Shah Abdul Qadir and Shah Rafiuddin, were also present. The wedding canopy was being set up while a tree was hampering the process. Meanwhile, Hazrat Sayyid Ahmad, Rahmatullah alayhi, came, and as he realized the problem, he folded his shirt, climbed the tree, and pulled the canopy such that it broke free of the tree and was assembled perfectly straight. Hazrat Shah Abdul Qadir, Rahmatullah alayhi, liked this wit of his and requested Shah Abdul Aziz to turn him over to him. He agreed and said, "Go with me, Ya Abdul Qadir. Go to Sayyid Sahib at the Akbari Masjid of Shah Abdul Qadir, Rahmatullah alayhi." He was given a room, and Shah Sahib, alayhi rahmah, instructed him to engage in zikr while sitting close to Sadari. Thus he engaged in what he was prescribed, and be it sunshine, rain, thunder, whatever, he would not get up from his place till Shah Sahib would instruct him to. Hazrat Shah Abdul Qadir, alayhi rahmah, kept him for Arhal. What's this here, boy? I don't understand. He kept him for a certain amount of years and then took him back to Shah Abdul Aziz, Rahmatullah alayhi. He said, "Here is Sayyid Ahmad Sahib. Here is Sayyid Ahmad Sahib. Test him now, test him." To which his brother said, "Mia Abdul Qadir, whatever you point to is correct. Now authorize him to preach the science to others." Shah Abdul Qadir, alayhi rahmah, said, "No, you will grant him the authorization and he shall carry on your order." Hence Shah Abdul Aziz granted him the Khilafah. A man came to Sheikh Shihabuddin Suharwardi, Rahmatullah alayhi. Hazrat kept him in his company for one day, cast spiritual attention towards him, and then authorized him in the order of the very next day. Took one day. The people who had been living at the sanctuary for years and years commented, "Hazrat, we have been service and khidmat for years while your special favors were directed towards him." And this is a great sheikh, Sheikh Shihabuddin Suharwardi, Sheikh Shihabuddin Suharwardi, alayhi rahmah. The Sheikh, Rahmatullah alayhi, replied, "He had come after fixing his oil and lamp. I only had to provide the spark." Today's disciples demand that the oil and the lamp also be provided by the Sheikh. They want the oil, the lamp, everything to be provided by the Sheikh, because their favor of giving the spiritual pledge was immense enough. Recollections of Hazrat Abdul Malik Siddiqui, alayhi rahmah. Maulana Abdul Malik Siddiqui, alayhi rahmah, who is the Sheikh of our Sheikh and one of the leading deputies of Hazrat Pir Fazal Ali Quraishi, alayhi rahmah, details a few incidents of authorizing people in his book Tajalliyat. He writes, "I was once accompanying my Sheikh during a tour of Delhi. We were staying at the Qazi house in Kuja Pandit. My mentor intended to visit the shrines of Hazrat Baqi Billah, alayhi rahmah, and other mashayikh. Since I was ill and had a headache, he instructed me to stay back and rest. Maulana Abdul Ghaffur Madani and Maulana Qamar Baba alayhim rahmah were present along with other scholars, ulama, and they all requested to go along with him. I talked to Hazrat about authorizing some people, and with humility I presented the name of Maulana Abdul Ghaffur. Since his services were immense, at this point some tears dropped from my eyes. Hazrat said, very well, we shall consult on the way back. When he arrived back, Hazrat alayhi rahmah had everyone sit in a large room and with me in seclusion. He said, Hazrat Khwaja Baqi Billah alayhi rahmah granted me one of his blessed kharkas, and I requested one for you too. To this he said, I have already given one to him. Why did you not tell me about a state of yours before? I said, Hazrat, the glad tidings had been given to me before, but I did not tell about them to you since I perceived it to be mere personal thought. He said, whatever transpires, inform me about it through letters. It is not mere thought. Then he added, Hazrat Baqi Billah alayhi rahmah instructed me concerning you that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever he proposes for authorization, do not reject them, for his endeavors have been accepted by us. When I stepped out of the room, Maulana Abdul Rashid Qamar Baba, known as Qamar Baba, came out of the large room and whispered in my ear, today is the day of generosity. Do not act stingily. This was divine insight, for he was complete unaware of our conversation in the room. At that point, I instructed Maulana Sayyid Amir Ali to prepare 19 certificates of authorization. Then I presented those to Hazrat alayhi rahmah with his permission. He said, very well, I shall sign all of these right now. However, act patiently in handing them over. Do it gradually as these people finish their suluk. Then I called 7 alims and presented them in front of Hazrat, which included Maulana Qazi Abdul Rashid, Maulana Sayyid Amir Ali, and Maulana Abdul Ghaffur Madani. I do not remember the rest of the names. Hazrat made them recite the terms of Khilafat, and then Hazrat granted them their certificates. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wassalamun ala al-mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Social expectation drowns us all inside. What you have should be what I want, 'cause what I have just ain't alright. The clothes I wear, the way I comb my hair, how I live.